if you just never give up and just keep chipping away at it and keep learning and improving, you're going to get there. I never would have thought that 62, 63 kilo kid from high school that used to run and swim and play Lego at home would be, 118 kilo bodybuilder that's like literally like lifting some of the heaviest weights that you can lift. I just never would have imagined that. I don't think I even wanted that at the time, but life has panned out to become that, and I'm very happy for where it is. We overcomplicate it, and the reason we overcomplicate it is because people don't want to do the work. Optimization is just trying to replace hard work, and you can't replace the hard work. There's a certain element of pride in getting under a heavy weight and lifting it with control and giving it a really good go. And if you're having a hard time mentally, or maybe you didn't rest that night and you still give it a good go that night and still try to train as hard as you did the week before when you were or rested, how good is that when you then finish that leg session or back session that was really hard and say, hey, I gave it my all and actually performed better than I did last week when I was actually under better conditions. I've never really followed the crowd even from a young age. I always like to do my own thing. You know how people say they're an introvert or extrovert? I think the way that you work that out is by working out what replenishes you and makes you feel better afterwards. So some people, they love lunches with all their mates and they just live for that, and they couldn't have lunch by themselves. I often have lunch by myself during the week. I just go to the Morrison and grab a steak and chips. I like my own company. Yep. I go for a walk. This is the last thing I do before I go to bed with my dog, and then I'm just chilled out, do my own thing. What I'm trying to get is with a lot of these people, they're just wired so differently to us. It's really hard to kind of work out how they view the world and how they see themselves.
Success leaves clues. That's today's guest's favourite quote. Not from a stoic, not from a scholar. This quote from Tony Robbins is a simple reminder that the life you want has already been lived. And if you're humble enough to watch, listen, and learn, the path reveals itself. Will is a man who doesn't speak in cliches. He speaks in actions, in years and decades of consistency, in torn biceps, rebuilt shoulders, GERD recovery, and gym sessions that span across seasons of life, not just summer.
He's a competitive athlete with over 20 years under his belt. He's also a high-performing director in the finance world. And most importantly, he's someone who treats his body not as a vanity project, but as a living sculpture, an ever-evolving reflection of discipline, curiosity, and care. In this episode, we talk about what it means to live in the long game, why control over your emotions is the ultimate form of strength, how masculinity isn't loud, it's consistent, and how treating yourself like your own best friend might be the most powerful mindset shift of all. If you've ever struggled with staying consistent, if you've dealt with an injury after injury and questioned why you're still doing this, or if you feel the tension between chasing size and maintaining health, this episode will reframe your entire approach to the body, discipline, and to the man you're becoming. Please welcome to the Jack Philosopher podcast, Will Giovas.
Gentlemen, great to be here today.
Great to have you, bro.
Thank you very much.
How have you been? All right.
Life's good. I've been looking forward to the podcast with the two of you. I actually spent a bit of time listening to some other ones, which are absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
The one with Jerome was great, and it's awesome to hear their different approaches to life and what they've gone through. The last one I actually listened to was Manny's, where he was talking about his struggles with, recreational drugs and how he's changed his life around. What an impressive guy, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's one thing that we love with every guest that we bring on here is obviously the ability to get into not just, the training philosophies that each person has and how strength translates into other areas of their life, but, about the struggles that men go through too, right? And being able to associate that with having physical fitness as our basis and our anchor. That's something that we commonly refer to any form of discipline of training, whether it's strength, martial arts, coaching, whatever, sports. And you're someone who's been involved in sport for a long time. So I remember, we first met, it's been a while now, when we used to bump into each other at the gym every so often. And then
I've actually got a funny story. So up until we met and spoke properly, I only knew you as the guy that wore the short tights, the
booty shorts,
the booty shorts,
the girls'
size. Yeah.
They're the best.
That's all I knew you as, and then
that's awesome.
Oh, and the big guy that grunts a lot.
That's great.
And then I got to know you, and I was like, oh, there's a lot to this guy. He's not just the bodybuilder. There's actually a lot to him.
Not just a big ass, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just a bonus.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, man, and I guess obviously we had very similar lines of thought when it came to not just bodybuilding and training philosophy, but our outlook in life. And, it was really good to obviously meet someone like yourself who, we resonated with a lot of the philosophies that we stand by, you know, in a world which we can all agree is, you know, extremely stuffed up at the moment. I mean, the recent events, as we saw, we just had a horrific event take place the other day in Bondi Junction, you know, a mass shooting at Bondi Beach. And, you know, it's a world that's constantly living in fear, and we're not sure what's going on. But one thing that we noticed with you, Will, and it's something that we all align with, is that we always stay true to our core values no matter what goes on in the world. And, you know, that's something that I think is extremely significant and rare nowadays. So I guess, you know, we wanted to dive into a little bit of, first of all, why you started, you know, playing sport in the first place and how that's translated into bodybuilding. And I remember you had told me you were a professional swimmer at one stage. So why don't we start there? How did you get into that?
When I was a kid, I had really, really bad asthma. So I'd finish school up and I'd get hooked up to a ventilator for 2 or 3 hours every single day.
Wow.
It was so bad. And eventually got to a stage where I had to get rushed into hospital when I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. Really, really bad. I had medication. I had all the puffers, all the drugs. Parents took me to a doctor one day and he had said, get into swimming. The special thing about swimming is that when your head's under the water, you're taking care of your anaerobic ability. So that's your body's ability to perform without constant oxygen going in. Every time you do your 3rd or 4th stroke, when you breathe to the side in freestyle, that air is coming back in. So that's the aerobic component where the air is coming back into the body. By you having a mixture of anaerobic and aerobic fitness, it really expands the lungs. And after about 6 months of swimming, my asthma completely went. And it kind of just ventured from that. So I went from swimming for health reasons to squads. Now, I was a breaststroker growing up, and I didn't know much about things like diet or nutrition. And so before swimming every day, I'd get butter chicken. And one of the rules at my swimming club was if you left the pool to go to the bathroom, you had to do butterfly. I'm having butter chicken every single day.
So you became a professional butterfly swimmer?
And so I became a professional butterflyer. At my fittest, I was doing 30 100s of butterfly. So that means I'll do 100 meters of butterfly 30 times.
Wow.
So that was the fittest I ever got. Long story short, I got pretty competitive in my swimming. It also translated to being a really competitive runner too. And I was actually the state champion for cross country back in my year 12 in high school. Believe it or not, I was 62 kilos.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm 118.
Well, there you go. There's reference, guys.
So I've been a competitive athlete all my life, ever since I was about 13 years old, and I'm 36 now. So I've been training for longer than I can even remember. So this is so normal to me. I've never been out of weight. I've never been unhealthy. I've always been doing something from a very young age.
Would you say that the diagnosis with asthma is what pushed you to, I guess, come out with your own solution of, you know, how you can attack this and, you know, how you can make your life better by introducing a form of sport? Or do you feel that you just naturally fell into sport and the, you know, the competitive aspect of things?
A lot of the time, life is justified by luck and placement and timing. And for me, it was just the fact that I pretty much agreed with everything my parents told me growing up. I was a good Greek boy, just did as I was told, went to the doctor. Doctor said, get into swimming, so I just did it. Until I was about 18 or 19, I didn't have much of my own personal thoughts or made decisions for myself. I pretty much just relied on my parents for advice, guidance, what to do next. And I was a good kid because I listened to them. And the gym, going out clubbing with my Greek friends, university, and also working as a bank teller in my very early 20s when I was about 20 years old is really what got me out of my shell. When you're a bank teller, you're serving 150 people a day. 50 of those people are brand new. Over the course of the year, it's like 20,000 people, I'm guessing, that you're meeting every year, making conversations. It really brought me out of that shell from that quiet, good Greek boy that loves playing Lego at home after school and computer games and drawing and arts and crafts to who I am today.
So you'd say that you were more reserved before, I guess, the exposure therapy of being a bank teller?
100%. I was such a quiet kid. Like with me, I was mega introverted. The whole weekend, I'd get a big blanket out, I'll pour it on the ground, all the Lego on the ground on top of the blanket, and I'll just sit there for 6 hours just building stuff. And that was the time of my life for me. And even in high school, I like to draw and paint. When I actually finished high school, I wanted to be an artist. So my undergrad degree was fine arts, and I specialized in printmaking and painting.
Oh, wow.
Very, very different.
Well, I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, I just loved art. So I can, anything you want me to draw, I can draw for you. All my tattoos on me, I've drawn them myself, and I just gave them to the tattoo artist.
That's cool.
So something that not many people know about me, that creative side. But the creative side for me at the moment is number one, my Lego creations, which I love to do outside of the gym and work. and my bodybuilding. I see it as sculpture and art.
Wow.
That's really, I had no idea that you were, I knew that you were like artistically inclined through your Lego designs that I've seen, but I didn't know that it was to that extent. Like that's amazing.
Yeah, I was went to, remember Art Express? The best artworks went to this place called Art Express, and there was one of the shy for all the best ones from our part of the world.
Yep.
And I remember in year 12, I did a photographic series called A Legacy of Leaders, a pun on the word legacy and Lego.
Yep.
And I did a photographic series where I took photos of Lego people's faces. I scrubbed the face off with acid, and I drew the person's face on by hand. I did famous leaders throughout history. And I was reading a lot about Stoicism and history in year 12. And that was one of the reasons I'm so excited about this podcast, because it's something I've been interested in for 20 years now. And so I did all different leaders, and the last leader at the time, I think it was George Bush, because he was all over the news back in 2007 when I graduated.
Yep.
And I did really well in the art series, and it actually went to this gallery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So art's been a huge part of my life growing up, and I'm just thankful I can find other ways to do it now. That's not just drawing or painting.
Yeah. That's really cool, you know, and it's funny because when people see someone of your stature, you know, automatically, you know, that's everyone, you know, that carries any sort of size. They just think straight away, you know, meathead.
Yeah.
You know, they think someone that just lifts weights, you know, screams. But what they fail to realize, and something that we've been able to, you know, bring out on this podcast with the various guests that we've brought on, is that there is a lot more to people's brains than you may think. And you should never judge a book by its cover. You know, because everyone has got something to them that unless you get to know them and understand them, then, you know, you really don't know. And that's another thing, you know, why we call the podcast a jacked philosopher, because, you know, I like to draw the comparison between that general term being jacked, but also being able to essentially talk philosophies and have those conversations and explore the mind beyond just the training and the lifty heavy and, you know, the heavy lifting and the grunting and whatnot, because you know, it's fascinating what these people are actually capable of. Like yourself, you said, you know, there aren't many bodybuilders that I know that are so artistically inclined. And I guess it sort of makes sense, you know, and it's amazing how you were able to draw that, you know, comparison from the art to on the paper to then on the body, and actually start to sculpt yourself, you know, as a form and as a recognition of art. So I wanted you to take us through that. Will, you know, so you were doing art physically, you were painting, building Legos and whatnot. And then how did you find bodybuilding? How did you first actually get introduced to it, and what drew you towards that side of, you know, of art?
Episode of The Jacked Philosopher is brought to you by Metamorph Physique, our coaching and mentorship program for men ready to transform their body, mindset, and life. We know what it feels to be stuck, overweight, unmotivated, undisciplined. That's where we started. And that is why we created a program that goes beyond training plans and diets. We rebuild daily structure, discipline, and the confidence that comes from building a physique that you're proud of. If you're ready to stop wasting time and finally take control, head to metamorphphysique.com or DM us on Instagram at George_metamorph or Nick_metamorph to transform your body and transform your life.
In my first year of uni, so I'm 18 at the time, I was still swimming. And I'd go to the little weights room after swimming and just play around with the weights. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd just jump on the leg press, the bench press. I had no idea. And I realized I enjoyed the weights component even more than the swimming. And I think it was time to wrap the swimming up. I did everything that I wanted to do. My professional days were over. I wanted to focus on my education and university and do well at that. So I wrapped up the swimming, went into more of a leisurely type squad, and got into the weights. Between the age of 18 and around 21, I did less and less cardio, less running, the daily jogs became weekly jogs. I can't even run anymore. I've run once.
I don't think any of us can, bro.
I've run once the last 10 years because a girl fell between the train and the platform at Central Station. I ran to get her, and I didn't even know I could run. I was more surprised with the fact that I could run than the fact that the girl had fallen between the platform. So that was the first time I've run.
Yeah.
But
did you get to her in time?
Yeah, she was okay, and I reached out and I grabbed her, and I perfect form, my shoulder pressed her out of the way, and she was fine. But yeah,
controlled the century.
I threw her back down and did another 12 reps just because it was my shoulder
before the train comes.
I just wanted to get a good pump with that 5-year-old. You know? To answer your question around the training, so I just joined this random gym at Menai. My best friend at the time got me into it. He was into the bodybuilding. I didn't even know what bodybuilding was. I just thought I just knew about weights, and so I just kind of copied him. there was this guy called Evan Setapani that he'd always watch YouTube videos of. And I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. So when he ordered some military boots from America, I got a pair too. And then I started walking around the gym in army boots, wanting to be one of the guys from the animal pack or whatever it was called back then. So that was something that I really, really enjoyed. I just love the look. You know, I never had any older brothers growing up. I never had any older like friends to look up to. So I was kind of just figuring stuff out for myself. And so, you know, my dad was a conservative banker. He was always working big hours. So I had a masculine role model in him on the weekends, but Monday to Friday, I didn't really have anyone to kind of look out for. So I've joined the gym as this 18-year-old guy, and I'm seeing all these older dudes, and I'm speaking to them, getting advice from them. And it's not just gym advice, it's life advice, it's mindset advice, how to speak to girls, how to act, how to be. So I'm getting all my lessons, not at university now, but at the gym.
I'm curious because during that age, you mentioned, you know, your dad's obviously very busy. You know, he's built himself a very successful business. But you said that you sort of lacked that, I guess, guidance Monday to Friday, or, you know, because he was so busy doing so many hours. A lot of people, when they find themselves in that stage, especially in the early years of adult life or, you know, late teens, they take one of two paths usually. They say usually, okay, well, I don't have the presence of my parents there to really control me. So they either find the guidance, you know, by luck, you know, and go a good way, or they'll start to meddle in other areas, you know, potentially be dragged and influenced into things that aren't going to be to their benefit. What made you choose to actually better yourself and to lean towards something that you knew firstly would be a challenge, because it's an effort to be able to, you know, to do that and to learn and to embrace new challenges, as opposed to, you know, go clubbing, get on drugs, you know, do all the things that other people typically our age would do, you know, from the get-go, because they have that lack of guidance. You know, what drew you to the gym instead?
The gym isn't too different from competitive swimming because it's got the structure, it's got the physicality, it's got the constant improvement and the measurability on doing better each time. So it's not too different. So if someone said, hey, go from competitive swimming to competitive running or competitive rowing or doing a bit of weights, it's not too much of a weird ask. But if someone said, hey, why don't you quit swimming and get into playing the piano, something that's so different to what I know. So this was familiar at the same time.
So it was already ingrained.
It was already ingrained. It wasn't something that was new to me. And I've been a competitive athlete all my life, from cross country to athletics to swimming to doing all these different things. I kind of knew what I was doing. So even when I first went to the gym on the first time I trained my legs, I was doing 300 kilos on the squat press, the first time I ever trained legs.
There you go.
The falls.
The skills are transferable, or the mindset and the discipline is transferable. You just have to learn, I guess, the techniques, and then off you go.
Exactly. It's not too different of an ask. So if you went, for example, from being working in the gym to being a personal trainer, it's interchangeable. You've already learnt the skills by watching the trainers there. No different from going from being a competitive athlete, learning the ropes of bodybuilding. Having said that, this was my mistake. When I got into the gym, I just thought the more I did, the better I was. If I could do lunges for 10 sets with 30 kilos, maybe that'll get me bigger than the guy that's doing one set with the 30 kilos. I just thought more was the best. I had no idea. I didn't know about fatigue management. I didn't know about diet. I didn't know about recovery. When I first started, I ran to the gym, did my session, ran home and had a can of tuna. I didn't know what I was doing. And that's how you learn.
Well, that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, I think when we all started, you know, you mentioned before, you know, you just, you know, leg press, bench press, whatever, you know, we all started the same way. I started my gym journey, you know, just bench pressing as heavy as I possibly could to the point where I hurt myself. And then, you know, leg press, the same thing. I think when I was 16 years old, I put like 500 kilos on the leg press at the school. I was doing like quarter reps, but hey, I got 500 kilos. I ended up throwing my L4 or L5 in the process, and it's never healed 100% since, but you know, you learn, right? And it's fun. It's fun. That's right. I think it's the start of the, I guess, competitive aspect of, you know, we attach a goal, you know, for men, it's a very masculine thing, you know, I moved X amount of weight, you know, it thrives us, right? Like it adds that sort of energy. And although it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, if you have that sort of goal there and it's an aspiration, then I think it's a perfect sort of marker for progress and, you know, for any sort of journey to start in the weightlifting.
Well, I'd say it does matter in the grand scheme of things because, I mean, on a macro level, maybe not. Like, obviously, the world's not going to change because you've leg pressed 500 kilos. But
change when Eddie Hall,
but it changes for
500.
Fair enough.
Down in history, mate.
No, but I'm saying for you, your world changes because it's like, okay, I've done that. What's next? Like, what's the next milestone I can hit? And over time, all these little, you know, milestones add up.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize that your whole life has changed when you look back. And I think the best for me was, so I wasn't very strong, especially in my upper body as a kid. I always had strong legs, but I remember when I was maybe 14 years old in the gym for the first time, I was incline benching the 12 kilo dumbbells. And now I warm up with the 30s and it just feels like piss. So just thinking about that, to me, it just changes my whole outlook. Like, look how far I've come in such a short time. Where else can I go? Where else can I take this?
Well, it's just the basis. It's just the basis for progress, right? And it's like anything. It's like even in business, we can talk about, when you look at your quarterly, monthly revenues, whatever, okay, awesome. What's the next goal? How can we beat this next time? Because you have that number there as a basis. And I think as men in general, it's very important to actually have these little micro goals that allow us to make these small progressions, because as you said, it's over the long term. As you said, from being that 60 kilo kid to now you're 118 kilos lean, when you look back at that over
Cool, lean enough.
Huh? Yeah. When you look back over time, it's like, okay, the day-to-day may not have been that big in terms of progress, but now you put, over 10, 15 years into it, it's like, there you go. So the art of delayed gratification, and obviously being at something long enough to be able to actually serve those long-term results.
Yeah, definitely. And what I wanted to ask was, so it's one thing just getting into the gym. You've been doing it now for 20 years.
Wow.
At what point did you know this is what I want to do for the rest of my life?
Something that I noticed, all the really, really good bodybuilders from a young age that had the genetic gifts, as soon as it got hard for them, they changed the course of their life. They did something else with it. So they either got into business, they got into drugs, whatever. I remember this guy, his name was Marco, when I was training at Sylvania when I was 18 or 19, however old I was. And he was just a genetic freak. He looked incredible. I'd ask him, Marco, you're 7% body fat. What did you have to eat today? He's like, I just had a Domino's pizza before I got here. And it blew my mind. And he just had all these genetic gifts from such a young age that he got over the bodybuilding really quick because he felt like he achieved everything that he wanted to do with his physique. And then he just moved on. With me, I was nothing special when I was in my early 20s. I was just a little 80 kilo guy after a few years of training, still not that impressive. And I just hadn't done what I wanted to. And it's just taken a lot of time. So the way that I treat the bodybuilding, I put a lot of intellectual thought into the processes that are involved. And it just takes a lot of time. Let me explain. The way that I kind of treat it, I treat it like an ongoing work project. So I look at all my different things in my life, from my recovery to the technology, to the supplementation, the training, the stress, every aspect of my life. And I'm always trying to assess what I can control, what I can change to make it better for my training. And it's just something that's become so natural to me. And I had this huge focus all these years, probably the first 18 years of the training, on just the pure bodybuilding aspect. And I didn't look at the health aspect of things. And I just thought the two, it didn't matter. Like, your health would just take care of itself. You're young. Who cares? Like, I'm not taking heroin on the weekend. I'm not smoking. I'm not doing drugs. I'll be fine. Like, this is a good lifestyle. It's not a good lifestyle on a health perspective if you're doing it at an extreme way of doing things. Anti-inflammatory pills, the drugs, the huge amounts of food, the stress on the body from all the training, and probably the under recovering, it all adds up very, very quickly.
Absolutely. And there's actually a conversation Nick and I were having yesterday at home about, how far is enough to the point where, you realize, okay, have I maxed out this? Have I maxed out my ability to be the best that I can be? Or, is there still something left? The question that he actually posed, what was the question that you asked?
So I was asking, at what point does the risk outweigh the reward when it comes to bodybuilding? And I think everyone will give a different answer.
Yeah, it's because it's such a personal question.
Yeah.
Okay, my risk and reward's probably more aggressive than most people's. I love this sport so much.
Same, bro.
I literally bleed for it. It gets me so excited. I love the fact that I've sacrificed over the years so much for it. I love that I've learned so much for all the amazing people that I've met. I really think this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. Now, when it comes to the risk reward, I'm willing to risk things like health. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to just tell you that I'm doing everything perfectly healthy. I'm not. And I'm cool with that.
I think it's important to be able to be content with the decisions that you make as well. And see, I'm with you on that, because we were going around in circles for about an hour yesterday. We were getting really deep and philosophical on it. And I told him, I said, look, Nick, at the end of the day, if I look at my lifestyle before I started bodybuilding, it was a complete 180, right? I was a drug addict, I was drinking, I was extremely overweight, I was obese. Now, obviously, as we know, bodybuilding to the extreme, especially to the level that we do, or, that we try to pursue it at, it's not healthy, right? We're constantly putting pressure on our digestive system. There's the pharmacology aspect. There's a lot of things that go into it, but we try to do our best to manage and to harm minimize where we can. As you said, taking the right supplementation, keeping our cardiovascular health up, making sure we're getting our steps done. Again, we don't know if that's going to be enough to save us, whatever, but at the end of the day, the structure that bodybuilding has given me and where it's been able to essentially overlay into other areas of life and to translate into the other skills that I have built, it's something that I wouldn't trade for the world. And what I came down to at the end of the day, and I think this applies to you as well, right? And it's a general rule of business or, anything. If you are really willing to take something to the extreme to be as good as you can at it, you have to sacrifice in order to do that, right? Whether that be your health, whether that be family time, social life, whatever the case may be, when's the last time you think Alex Hormozy was able to go out with his wife, and just have a relaxing dinner without even having to think about business, right? It consumes you in a way.
100%.
But in order to be in that top 1%, you have to, it's like, and that's with anything. That's with any skill, any job. If you want to be the best plumber in the world, right, you're going to be taking on all the quotes. You're going to be working 24/7. It's just the way that it is. And bodybuilding is no different. I just think that the reason why it's looked down upon as something unhealthy is because it's physically obvious. Yep. It's the only sport in the world where you can physically see the progress taking place. Whereas if you look at someone that might be a very busy entrepreneur who's running multi-billion-dollar corporations, he might be on his laptop 24 hours a day, completely sleep deprived, hasn't eaten a meal in 3 or 4 days, but you can't see that happening, so you don't know that he's unhealthy. But when you compare the two, I think it's the same level of dedication. It's just one is physically visible, one is not. That's why I think the comparison...
I wouldn't say that one's healthier than the other, obviously. Like, they're both unhealthy.
Yeah, but the bottom
I'm just saying, at what point do you sort of, weigh up what you actually want out of life, and how do you make the decision that I want to bodybuild regardless of what it does to me and my health?
Let me ask you a question. What's your relationship with yourself like now compared to 5 years ago?
Oh, heaps better.
How do you view yourself when you wake up now compared to 5 years ago?
Well, for one, it's a good question. It's a very honest question of self-reflection. Look, I view myself now at the point where I can always improve. So back then, though, I didn't think there was anything to improve on because I thought I was worthless.
Yeah.
So because I didn't associate myself with anything, because I had no goals, I had no direction at all, I didn't care what happened to me. Whereas now, I value myself and my body and who I am as a person to the point where it's a constant, like you said, a craft and art that I want to keep working on. I want to keep refining. I want to keep chipping away at that sculpture, not just physically, but internally as well. Because I've found that through the relationships that I've built over the last few years, again, through the gym, through, boys like yourself, the other boys, and the community that we've been able to find through bodybuilding, I find myself, that I actually hold some sort of true value and that I can help people as well. The better I can help myself and better myself, then I can give more to other people, which is ultimately what I want to do. And bodybuilding has actually given me that. So, yes, it's a complete difference. It's a complete difference.
Would you say you're best friends with yourself now?
I'd say that I've got a very good relationship with myself, yeah.
I would say you're, on the flip side, I'd say you're much more critical of yourself.
That too.
That's good. That's part of it.
Yeah, no,
I think it's necessary.
Yeah, it shows that you got that self-respect for yourself, that you want to improve and have more in life. And as men, that's what we want. We want more all the time. And maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing, but it's just the reality. We always want more. We want to achieve. We get our social standing from achievement and from progress.
Absolutely. 100%.
So before all that, you had said that you fell in love with the sport.
Yeah.
Do you have anything specific about it?
Yeah, I'll take you through it. Originally, it was just the athletic component. I just loved to go into the gym and thrash myself and just see how far I could take it.
Yep.
And then as I progressed from my 20s, it went from weightlifting to bodybuilding, learning more about bodybuilding. that it's, I just thought weightlifting and bodybuilding and powerlifting was all the same thing when I first started. I didn't know what was what.
Yeah.
I knew there was a guy called Ronnie Coleman that was really strong and he looked pretty good in posing trunks. That was pretty much as far as it went. And then I just fell in love with the actual sport of bodybuilding, with the actual craft of posing. I love posing now just as much as the actual weights.
Yep.
I pose every single day after weights. Every day I do it now. And I love being creative with the flow. I love doing different transitions. I'm just having fun with it. And it's something that gives me a lot of joy after each session at the moment.
I'm the same, actually. Recently, and Nick's seen it too. After each session, I'll try and pose as well. And one of the things that initially actually drew me to bodybuilding, and you're probably similar in this, is when I look at some of these posing routines from the top pros. Terrence Ruffin in Classic. He's one of my favorite bodybuilders, just for the sake of his posing. It's literally an art form. I remember when I saw him pose at the Arnold Classic last year. That's still my favorite routine that I've ever seen of his. And I actually got emotional watching him pose on stage, because I'm like, this is the art of bodybuilding right here. It's all well and good to build the physique, but to present it the way that bodybuilders like him do, that's just on another level. And it's and again, it doesn't just accentuate that competitive aspect of it, but also the art form component of it.
That separation between you and your body, where your body is this non-vain project that you're constantly working on. Like when you're looking at yourself in the mirror, you're not thinking, "Oh, I'm a fucking animal." You're not thinking, "Oh, maybe you are a little bit," because you're looking pretty good at the moment.
Oh no,
but you're completely separate. You're thinking, "Okay, this is my side chest. This is what I need to work on. I need to bring my midsection in. I need a little bit of meat on that hamstring."
Yep.
It's literally no different to me looking at a Lego castle that I'm building, and it's this ongoing project. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's sick. It's sick. And I think it's something so cool to work towards, because, again, as you said, it gives us something more to work towards.
Yeah.
It's always refining, improving, and knowing that with bodybuilding, rather, I guess the downside, this is the catch-22 of it, you're never really going to be 100% satisfied, right?
Never.
There's always more work to do. There's always more gaps to fill. We always have our weaknesses too, especially us who aren't genetic freaks. It's like, okay, arms could always be bigger.
Always.
It's like there's so many things to consistently improve on it, but the fact that we have that roadmap out there, and it's like there's so much information, there's so many things that we can refine and tune that are going to, like I said, make those little Lego pieces polish and, just make them all work together. That's the beauty of the sport. And I think it's a good lesson to learn in life as well, because when you have a discipline like that, right, whether it's a competitive aspect or not, when you have that there as your foundation, as your rock, and you know that something with that in itself can always be improved on, and you can dedicate an amount of time every single day of the week, whether it's through the gym work or through the nutrition as well, because that's the other big component that helps build that physique, that sculpture, then it translates into other areas of life. So what I want to ask you, Will, is, obviously you've been in a corporate world. The business that your father started up, and then it's branched out into multiple companies and whatnot. How are you able to switch from Will, the bodybuilder who we know at the gym, right? The loud, aggressive, in the girl gym tights, to then in a nice tidy suit,
Yeah, of course.
Hello, shareholders. Like, how are you able to sort of make that transition? And yeah, I just want to know, how do you survive in the corporate world? Because that's something that I don't know if I could do, just being the type of person that I am in the gym.
It's all about appearance. It's everything. Appearance is everything.
Yeah.
I've got to spend extra money on getting my suits tailored. I've got to spend extra money on getting the shirts done at a proper tailor. Everything's always got to be twice as sharp as the guy that doesn't go to the gym, because you're already on the back foot. So after the appearance, then it's about the work. It's about how you present yourself, how you speak. I've got to be better spoken than everyone. I've got to make sure that the job that I do is of high quality all the time, because people are always judging you. All my clients, I've got a great relationship with them, because they couldn't care less when they see me. I'm wearing a suit when it's a client meeting and a collared shirt, RM Williams shoes. I'm looking smick, and I make them look good, and I do my best to make their life easy. If you're doing those things, it's totally okay. If you're not taking care of your appearance, you're doing sloppy work, your appearance from the gym, the fact that muscular, covered in tattoos, beard, you're going to get judged twice as much.
Why do you think there's a negative connotation in the corporate world between, people that clearly look after themselves in terms of, they're bigger, they're jacked, or even tattoos as an example, right? Why do you think that automatically you're prejudged in that world?
There's different levels of the corporate world. So let's say like you're a business baker, you're taking care of small businesses. You'd probably rock up to that business meeting in a polo t-shirt with your tats hanging out. They're probably not going to judge you. when it goes from that small business to a large multinational corporation worth $1 billion, and you're meeting a CFO of a business that's been to Harvard University, that's been overseas, that's been brought up in the UK, that's lived in Hong Kong for the last 10 years of his life, he's going to judge you more than anybody. So you got to make sure that he gets not the complete bodybuilding version of you that's on the weekend, but that professional, clean version that's going to take care of him, his money, make him look good.
Why do you think that is? Is it just perceived like as, you know, why that mindset when you're at such a high level?
Let me have a think about it. Give me a sec.
Well, it's an interesting question because we always see, like, because I went to a private school, right? And you know, at that private school, I was always a loud ethnic,
of course,
the loud wog. You know, my parents sacrificed a lot of money, you know, to send me there because they were hoping I'd make something of myself academically. But you know, Trinity Grammar, you know, it was a great school if you have the means to do well in that. But I noticed, you know, a lot for me, you know, because I was louder, you know, I'd never shave either. I'd always let my beard grow out to the point where the teachers would tell me off about it. But you could tell there was a level of class.
You had a beard in high school.
Yeah, that's it.
What the fuck? I've had this since I was 15.
The headmaster, right? God bless you, was a nice man.
Yeah.
The headmaster back then, Milton Chuez, you know, Mr. Chuez, he made me shave. I rocked up to the first day of the HSC with it was like this.
Yeah.
And I was 16 years old, right?
That's
you know,
so funny.
He'd made me shave with one of those shit big razors.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they're like the prison razors.
Probably cut you a little bit on the face. Yeah.
I'm sitting there in the bathroom before my first HSC exam, and then I was itchy the whole time. Anyway,
That's horrible.
but there was an element of class. You could tell a lot of these people, you were in the corporate world. Then, I felt, even though they didn't like verbally say anything to me, I could tell that because of how I was, how I acted, you know, automatically there was that prejudgment already there, right? Just because of the type of person that I was. But what I want to know is, in the corporate world, you know, it's interesting how you see all these people rise up through the ranks, and you know, it's like, oh, the bodybuilders, oh, the people with tattoos. In a world that is supposed to be accepting now, right? I want to know, why do people automatically associate someone that, again, is jacked with potentially being dangerous? You know, again, they look at someone that's jacked straight away, you know, he probably hits his missus, or, you know, this. Why does that connotation exist at all when we look at the first males, right? The original, we look at the Spartans, you look at the warriors, they were all looking exactly like the people that they are judging. And they're the ones that conquered kingdoms. They're the ones that, you know, went across and established authority, right? And were the leaders. But now it's like it's flipped. And if you look anything that resembles that, right, of a masculine stoic man, all of a sudden, you know, that's disregarded.
I'll take you through it. 1,000 years ago, if you were a Greek soldier in the Byzantine Empire, for example, cutting people's heads off, you'd probably be one of the top guys in society. You'd be respected and looked up to. In today's day and age, you wouldn't that same personality type wouldn't be able to sit in an office for 10 hours in front of a computer typing things up, and then they'll be saying it's ADHD.
Yeah.
So we've got a word for everything these days. But the world that we live in, ever since the Industrial Revolution, has completely changed. So it's gone from agricultural, it's gone from focusing on things like strength. It's gone where the social hierarchy for the man is things like masculinity, protecting the family. It's gone to, you know, things like paperwork. It's gone to things like decorum. It's gone to things like being a gentleman. So acting in a way that you don't want to actually fit in with society has been a huge focus for the last 150 years. And so when people act in a way that's more savage, that's more base, that's more masculine, it's looked down upon because that's seen as something that's uncontrollable, and it's seen as something that society has moved away from. And now look at society. We've got men dressed as women. Mrs. Claus 2 days ago at the front of the Christmas tree in the middle of the city, scaring children. And that's become the norm, and it's been allowed.
Is that a man dressed up as
two days ago, there was a guy dressed up as Mrs. Claus, lifting his dress up and doing a Christmas carol. And it was all over the news because a lot of Christians, rightly so, weren't happy about it. And they shouldn't be, because their public holiday shouldn't be made into a joke.
Exactly. Well, not just that. One of the Christmas trees that they've got put up as well, it says Happy Holidays. They've taken out Merry Christmas, right? You know, it's because they want to make it neutral.
But you know what the good thing about it is? When you go through the city right now, they're back to all Merry Christmas. So maybe things are turning back to a more normal world that we lived up through the 90s growing up as kids. But you go around the city right now, all those signs say Merry Christmas. Perfect.
Yeah, exactly how it should be. I guess we have seen this.
I want to tell you something too.
Yeah.
When I'm at work, people call me sir. They call me sir when I'm at work. When I go grab a coffee, when I've got a meeting where I'm picking up, if I'm going to Office Works to pick up a piece of stationery, the guy calls me sir because I'm wearing a suit and my appearance. When I get to the gym after work, I get called bro.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
It's all about appearance is everything. How you hold yourself is everything. And you can completely change how someone's going to judge you and treat you just on how you speak, what you wear.
Absolutely. Well, that's why I think it's a necessary skill for all men to be able to actually have that in the back of their mind, how they do appear in front of other people. Because not everyone has that skill or that level of self-awareness, but it does make a big difference to how someone is going to perceive you, especially when it comes to, I know job interviews. I've been to job interviews in the past where it's been a fairly low-level job. It's nothing special, but I'll always rock up dressed for a job interview.
Good.
The same thing, if I remember when I went to court for a speeding fine, I rocked up in a suit as if I was going to a wedding, right? And the case that was heard before me, right, the magistrate, look, the guy was dressed in TNs, he was wearing a Nike tracksuit with a hat in the courtroom, right? She took one look at him and he tried to plead, not guilty, whatever. He had about 3 or 4 different charges on him. Anyway, she took one look at him and said, "No, get out of my courtroom. Like, these charges are sticking." Yeah. And then I was the next case after that. So I actually rocked up. She was already in a shit mood because, this guy had just taken the piss out of his own case.
Yeah.
And then next is George Varvaresos, I'm like, oh.
Looking sharp in a suit.
Yeah, but, I was scared because...
He shaved for that as well.
I fully shaved. I'd never shaved in my life, but like I said, school.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I just told her, I said, listen, I spoke very professionally. I addressed her as Your Honor.
Yeah.
And she ended up giving me a Section 10. I was able to keep my license because of that. And that was straight after a case where, the guy got kicked out of the courtroom. So, as you said, it just goes to show that...
Did you have a teabag singlet underneath the suit?
No. I had the stringer ready to go.
Straight to the gym from court?
Dead set. No, I was actually still a big boy. That was before I started training. But yeah, it just goes to show that, exactly as you said, Will, how you present yourself as a man is extremely important as to how you're going to be perceived and ultimately how you're going to be judged, because at the end of the day, we are going to be judged, right, regardless.
Totally, mate, yeah.
People, recently at my government job that I just left, forcibly, people would see me straight away, because I lifted weights, because I looked vascular as well, in the work polo shirt. I straight away, just look at him, kind of.
Do you know what the really sad thing about that story is? If they saw you 5 years ago, they wouldn't have said a word.
I know.
How sad is that?
I know.
The fact that you want to improve yourself, better yourself, take care of your health more important than anything. But people judge you more than they would have 5 years ago when you were overweight and probably taking drugs on your downtime.
It's interesting because I was having this conversation with my coach, and he said to me, a lot of these people, when they see that you're trying to improve or do better than they could do, it turns into jealousy, right? And it might sound arrogant, but it's the truth, right? When someone sees you really giving someone a red hot crack and you're committed to it, they all want the same thing, right? Because when you think of it realistically, in modern society, it's all about this body positivity movement, right? You've got all these people coming out on social media saying, oh, we shouldn't be judged for the way we look. It's okay to be fat. And then you've got fat personal trainers. But at the same time, you've got the most prescribed drug in the world at the moment, which is a GLP-2, right? Yep. Freaking, GLP-1, sorry, Ozempic. Yeah. So that just goes to show everyone wants to look good. They want to lose the weight, but they don't want to put the work in. Exactly. They want to take the shortcut instead.
And funny how a lot of those pro-weight people, all those influencers, have actually lost weight the last 6 months because of Ozempic. Yeah. So they're all full of shit the whole time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What do you think sort of creates that such a high level of delusion when, like someone like Lizzo would post the photo and she'd have like literally a million girls saying, oh, you look beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, objectively you don't. What sort of creates that level of delusion? How do you get to that point?
It'd be so easy for me to just say something based like everyone's just full of shit and they're just trying to get likes. I actually think social media's had a huge negative impact on that generation that's just a little bit younger than me, because it was coming out when I'd finished high school. So in 2007, that was in year 12. I got Facebook at the time.
Yep.
Played around with a little bit for MySpace, MSN chat, but it didn't have these bits of programming that would really make us look at specific topics that made us sit in echo chambers of our own world and political views all the time. So now with social media, people have been indoctrinated where they've had it since they were in primary school in some cases. And what's happened is it's completely changed their value system and the way that they look at the world. They're getting their lessons not from their parents, but from strangers in America that don't care about them, but couldn't care less what happens, how they take that information on and use it.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that is extremely dangerous. And we've brought it up in the past because it does provide the basis for that indoctrination to take place. And, you know, especially the younger kids now, you look at the generation, right? And it's funny because we were brought up, we were under that generation that you spoke about, right? Yet our parents valued, you know, the morals and the, you know, the values that we were brought up through the Orthodox Church and through our faith, where, you know, it didn't matter what indoctrination came down from, you know, the Western world or whatever powers that be. We always knew what the right path was, even though we might have been swayed or influenced here and there. It's still like, no, you know, we know what the right thing is. It feels right. You know, we're not going to sway from this. But you look at the rest of the young kids nowadays, they can't even have a conversation. You know, it's gotten to the point where it's an effort for you to get them off their phone to even look at you in the eye to be able to talk. You know, they can't string out sentences.
That's so true.
Their parents can't control them either.
And there's zero respect either.
I've seen some of the way that kids talk to their parents nowadays. It's disgusting.
Well, look, some of them haven't acted in a way that commands respect from their kids.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So there's that too, because
it's like the respect podium. So when you win an award, gold, silver, bronze is the podium where you get your award from. And in all relationships, either above or below someone on the podium, it happens in the back of your mind. So when you have any interaction with a person, that person sits above or below you. And you actually do it subconsciously. And you do it all the time. And unfortunately, poor parenting puts the parent below the child on that respect podium. And so the kids got no reason to respect their parent. They become the adult.
That's true.
It's very interesting. So you said you've been reading a lot of psychology books.
Yes. I've actually been really interested in psychology for about the last 3 years of my life.
Yeah.
About 3 years ago, I was dating this girl, and that was more than 3 years ago now. Maybe about 3.5. And she had this thing called borderline personality disorder. And I really didn't understand it at the time because she was just acting in all these irrational type ways. And I just wanted to understand it better to see, you know, am I losing my mind? What's real? What's not real? And so it kind of got me started on this journey of reading about that. And then it branched off to other topics. When I was in high school, there was a guy called Lloyd. And Lloyd wanted to create a laser from the moon to Earth to blow stuff up. And I thought Lloyd was a weird guy.
Yeah.
But Lloyd was autistic. In school, we weren't taught about things like autism. So my interest in psychology branched from things like learning about BPD, narcissism, bipolar, to actual cases like what I just said about Lloyd. So if there was a framework back in school where we actually learned that you can be autistic and what that meant and how it works, I probably would have been able to, you know, speak with him better rather than just not ever speaking to the guy. How hard would it have been for Lloyd having no friends in high school because everyone just thought he wanted to blow Earth up from the moon?
Yeah.
And these autistic people, they're fantastic. They change the world. They've got a special way of looking at topics and problem solving. And they're the ones that do special things. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I actually have lunch with an autistic guy. He's actually a good friend of mine now, ever since catching up with him every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And he's one of the most brilliant minds I've ever met. He's fantastic at mathematics. He actually went to Europe this year to lecture people on mathematics topics.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's great.
Yeah. I think they have just an ability to look at things in such an abstract way, and that allows them to, I guess, problem solve, like you said, in ways that we wouldn't think of.
You know, in government jobs where they talk about having different types of people, like maybe they want like specific genders, specific...
Oh, the ESG.
All that type of stuff. There's actually merit to actually having different ways of thought. So if you had a business, how good would it be to have an autistic person to have a different way of looking at problems in the business? That would be a huge asset.
Absolutely. I think they're gifts. If you learn, if they are able to be trained in a way where, like I said, they can accentuate those gifts and are able to lean in on them, then a lot of them end up figuring it out on themselves anyway. You know, they go through so much adversity and hardship trying to figure out, you know, why they can't be understood. And then at one point, you know, my godbrother's actually a very good example. You know, he's George as well. You know, he grew up and he had really bad autism when he was younger. And, you know, he had a lot of effects. His parents tried to figure out, you know, a lot, you know, how to fix him up. And then he had another condition as well called chronic fatigue, you know, growing up as well, which he deals with now as well. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's found his passion in photography.
He's great. I bet he's fantastic at it too.
Yeah, very good. And he loves his Lego too. His whole room, full of Lego.
I have to show him some photos.
So, but it's like as soon as they find what their skill is and they hone in on it, they become one of the best at it.
And they don't need to be fixed. They're just different. They're just the way of looking at things different.
Exactly.
And how sad is it, like in your government job, for example, how there's this huge focus on, having a transsexual the business or like gays or lesbians or having this huge thought on gender or making purple cupcakes. Who cares about what sexuality someone is? Who cares what race someone is? Who cares what religion they are? But how important is it to look at different ways of thinking and problem solving and having different people like that in a company?
I think that there's so much focus on inclusion in the workplace for the sake of equality, whereby when you push an agenda like that so much, you actually make people feel the opposite. It's actually exclusion, because all you see is whatever the daily agenda is being rammed down your throat to the point where you're like, if I'm not a part of this club, then I'm actually an outlier. And that's just a normal human being. Like if I'm a normal straight male who, likes women and I want to be a father and have kids and I also want to look after my body, the government, a government job will look at you, as if, that's not normal. We don't want that here.
Yeah.
And so fuck off. Like, what? You're forgetting who.
How did you feel in your last job? Did you feel like that you were included in the workplace, or did you feel like you were like?
Oh, absolutely. No, I'll be transparent. I don't care who sees this. I'll be transparent with that. It's like, look, I knew what I was getting into when I first joined up.
Yeah.
Because at the moment, I needed a full-time job. I needed stable income, which
you need cash flow.
Yeah, exactly.
Fine. Yeah.
Which that provided. However, within that, the amount of altercations and disagreements and the times I was, put up before either disciplinary hearings, or they used to call them, I used to have to write minutes, right? They used to call this thing, write me a minute, for this. I remember they used to make me write minutes because I used to have my COVID mask, lowered below my nose, because I couldn't freaking breathe in it properly, right? Mm-hmm. And at the time, in the build, it wasn't even law that you had to wear it. They just made up their own rubbish anyway. Yeah. But I was targeted, right? And plus, I used to talk back a little bit as well because I didn't agree with anything. So I did make myself a bit of a target. But yeah, I knew from
because you're not a pushover and you got your own views on the world. And the reality is, it's not about opinions; it's about facts, and a lot of your opinions are facts.
That's the thing. And in a government job, you can't have that because as soon as another picture starts to be painted, then and it goes against whatever the government of the day initiative is, automatically, it's like you're an enemy of the state, kind of thing. So, look. I did throw myself in the deep end with that, but I think the advantage of being in that role as well, it taught me resilience, which I think was necessary. So one thing that I have learned, and I can thank, and I'm still friends with some colleagues from there. Not everyone was bad. It was just the people that ran the joint, and just the whole system that it falls under. It's a failed system. Nothing ever got done. I was working in environments where, technologies were broken that, needed to be fixed for the whole purpose of actually maintaining our security, right, which is a big thing, in the government organization that I worked in. And things weren't being fixed because no one could make a decision.
Yeah.
Because that's how the whole system is tiered. There's no hierarchy. There's no nothing. It's just, let's have a conversation about it because everyone needs to feel happy and welcomed. But when it comes to making a decision, no one had the balls to do that. And that's the biggest thing that I noticed that I didn't want to implement in my business or in myself, seeing myself as a future leader. It's like, no, you have to be able to make a decision, even if it's a risk, even if it might not work out. You have to be willing to accept that risk. Because if that fails, and you don't give yourself the opportunity to learn from that failure, how are you going to progress? How are you going to build? So that's what I have to thank from that experience. But again, it was hard. But
you just spoke about resilience just then. It's a huge thing. It's resilience is success over a long period of time. You wouldn't have been as resilient without your bodybuilding, I guarantee it.
No.
Why do you think that is? How does bodybuilding transfer to the mind where it's made you more resilient mentally when it comes to your problem solving?
I think it comes down to when you put yourself through something that's hard intentionally, then no matter what else hits you in life, you can get through it because you've done something that's hard or you are doing something that's hard. Every day, it builds confidence within yourself and your own abilities because okay, I got this done, which 99.9% of the world cannot do. And I'm continuing to improve on that. So no matter what hits you in life, you're able to deal with it a lot better.
Now, I'll tell you something about my bodybuilding. I've had things where people would have just given up over the years. In 2018, I had a complete shoulder surgery. Everything got cleaned up. I was in a sling for about 3 months after that. In 2020, I was doing a 180 kilo bent over row. And every time I was doing a rep, the actual shoulder to bicep insertion was feeling looser because it had been tight for about a week. And I'm thinking, oh, this bent over row is feeling really good. Like my biceps feeling nice and loose. Yeah. This is a really good stretch. And every rep, it felt better and better.
Yeah.
And then on the fourth rep, the bicep completely came out of my shoulder. It rolled down to my elbow. And I was looking at it. It didn't actually hurt that much. Maybe a 3 out of 10 in pain. But the bicep was like just missing. And I walk up to the gym owner, Billy at City Gym. I'm like, hey, Billy, I think I've torn the bicep off the bone. He's like, nah, mate, couldn't have done that. You would have, you'd be really hurting right now. I'm like, oh, yeah, it hurts a bit. Here's my arm, eh? Yeah. He's like, oh, fuck me. You better go to hospital. So dad comes, he picks me up. And I actually had the thing reattached for about a week. And after that, I was then put into a sling. And then that was in 2020. And then, so I've had 2 shoulder surgeries now, and one of them is also a bit of a complete bicep reattachment, and it's all good now. And I've been smart about things. I don't do any pressing work anymore. My shoulder's probably my best body part. I just do side laterals from different angles, and it's been great for me.
Yeah. But as you said, the biggest thing there is a lot of people that would go through those injuries, it pretty much, derail them because you're not able to do the thing that you love most, right? But because you've willingly put yourself, through the process of embracing challenges and just building that skill up and that resilience over the course of time, when something like that comes and hits you, it's not going to be as aggressive or it's not going to be as, shocking, in a way. And there's another good example. I don't know if you know, there's a UK bodybuilder called Louis Blackmore.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So a while back, he actually got an infection, right? And I think it developed into sepsis. Don't quote me on it, but he developed a really bad infection from an L-carnitine shot, right?
Yeah.
And
L-carnitine shot.
Yeah. No, it was.
L-carnitine. Yeah. L-carnitine.
Supplement. And
L-carnitine 250. Yeah.
And it's essentially what happened. Essentially what happened was he actually took himself to the hospital, and I saw he did a whole YouTube sort of series on it. And I think the first time they actually sent him away, they said, it's nothing, don't worry, it's fine. Just the normal lump that you might get after a shot. And then essentially it got progressively worse over the next few days. Anyway, long story short, he almost lost his arm. Like, it got really bad.
So bad.
He got really sick. I think there was an infection in his blood too, from memory.
Yeah.
And he was out of action he was in prep too, because I remember it was just after he had come here, because I'd actually met him. He came to Moore Park.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and I shook his hand, and I had a chat with him because I recognized him. And yeah, anyway, it happened just after that, and he was out of action for months. And I remember him putting up Q&A polls on his story, and everyone's like, how are you dealing with this? And he's like, look, everything is a challenge, it's a hurdle, and I will get through this because I've done it in the past. Like, this is my whole lifestyle. It's getting through challenges and just keep pushing the boundaries. And that inspired the fuck out of me. Like, I saw that and I'm like, I don't know how I would be able to come back from something like that. But now when I think of it, back to the question that you asked me before, is like building the resilience, how does it overlay? It does. It's how I was able to deal with losing my government, being forcibly, exited out of my government job, because it's like, what? We've managed to slowly build a business. We've got a podcast, all these things that I couldn't imagine us to have done in the past, right? And
it wasn't a loss. It was just a redirection to the right things.
Exactly. And you were someone to thank as well for that, because I remember having the conversation with you earlier and you said to me, it's like, it's a blessing, bro. It allows me to lock in and, essentially do what we're able to do now. So,
brother, anxiety is the distance between the life that you want and the life that you have. That's your anxiety. That's your stress. That's your negative thought. The more similar the life that you have is to the one that you want and dream about, that's pure happiness and joy. And so now that you're doing something where you got your business up and running with your brother, which is a blessing, not many people have an amazing relationship with their own brother or sister that they can work with every day. That's amazing. And you get a podcast where you have your mates and you have some interesting people come out and have a chat with. Your life is lining up to the life that you want. And so that it was an actual win not working for the government anymore.
Absolutely.
You're having some loser telling you to have a packet of Lay's chips on your lunch break and question you for not doing it. That would have been really stressful for me.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. But as you said, it builds resilience. It just solidifies why I do what I do. And it's like, dare to be different, I love being different. Why would you want to be part of the general mold anyway? Like, we look at the state of life, at the quality of life nowadays, and yes, everyone complains about the cost of living and everything. Like, okay, it is expensive. Yes, ATO's trying to screw us and whatnot, but at the end of the day, you have every single opportunity to make something of yourself, all it requires is you to start. But that's the hardest bit.
And to not give up, too.
And to not give up.
We're talking about resilience. Like, I remember I got out of the surgery. The next day I was at the gym. I trained legs. I put 500 kilos on the leg press with one arm at a time, partly because I'm an idiot. Secondly, because fuck it, why not?
Yeah.
I already had the surgery. I'm not going to break my arm putting a 20-kilo plate on while the other was in the sling. And you know what? I did 3 sets. And then at the end, people actually looked at me and they helped me put the weights away. How nice is that?
There you go.
But what I'm trying to get at is, if you just never give up and just keep chipping away at it and keep learning and improving, you're gonna get there. I never would have thought that 62, 63 kilo kid from high school that used to run and swim and play Lego at home, would be 118 kilo bodybuilder. That's like literally like lifting some of the heaviest weights that you can lift. I just never would have imagined that. I don't think I even wanted that at the time, but life has panned out to become that, and I'm very happy for where it is. Like,
that's awesome.
I had stomach acid in literally a year ago. I didn't know what was happening, so I'd eat food and then I'll just vomit it back out. It'll just come right back up. And maybe it was because of the huge amounts of food. Maybe it was because I was taking too many anti-inflammatory pills to get me through my grueling leg sessions where I was probably under-recovered each week too. It was really bad. And so I've had this huge journey this year where it's been all about gut health and realizing that the healthier I get in my digestion allows me to be a better bodybuilder. Better health can make a better body. It's not about doing things that just make you a better athlete and not thinking about health. It doesn't work like that. And I really did think that in all my 20s that health wasn't important and it sorted itself out, or it doesn't matter what happens at 80. But when you focus on your health, this is like really cookie cutter stuff that it took me literally 10 years to work out, that you become a better athlete.
Look, I think part of it as well, and it's something that I realized early on too, because when I first started bodybuilding, I mean, I didn't know any better either. It's like, supplements were through the roof, and, you're always doing things that aren't the safest approach. And I think it takes, an element of putting the ego aside and saying, you know what, if I've got everything else optimized to the point where, as you said, my body's healthy, my gut's in good check, I'm going to grow regardless of, of what protocol is in place.
That's right.
And I think that's the most important lesson to learn. And it takes, bro, it takes some people, like I said, quicker than others. I was lucky. I was blessed to have a coach, who's extremely educated in the space, who pretty much told me from the get-go, he's like, listen, we need to focus on all of this shit first. And then, the rest of it will come. And the rest is just time, as you said. It's just time in the sport, time getting strong, learning and refining things. And you're someone who, likes to, like you said, you like to put the pieces of the puzzle together yourself. You like to try different methods. You like to work on different philosophies, different training styles, and just see what works. And I think part of that is what makes it so fun for you, right? Because you do get to put those massive weights on the leg press. And, who cares? Like, people think, oh, that's optimal, that's not optimal. It's like, bro, he's loving life. He's turning up to the gym every single day of the week. He's getting stronger and he's having a good time doing it. Like, why does it matter? This is another thing that I wanted to sort of get into with you, because we're in a science-driven world now where, everything has to be quote-unquote optimal, and, it's turned into people...
It's just shortcuts, really.
Pretty much.
If a study comes out that says, if you do 1 rep per week, you're going to grow.
Have you seen where they do cables and they hold a D handle while they're going to cut?
They've got like a balloon that shoots around.
Yeah, so I was training triceps a few weeks ago, and this random 20-year-old kid comes up to me, he's like, can I work in with you? And I'm thinking, yeah, no worries. Then he just pulls out like 2 cuffs, and then he ties his arm to the cable machine with a band. I'm thinking, what the fuck is going on right here?
He's got a whole rock kit in his back.
Like, just do your warm up and fuck off, mate. And then I'll do a set, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. We overcomplicate it, and the reason we overcomplicate it is because people don't want to do the work. They optimization is just trying to replace hard work, and you can't replace the hard work. There's a certain element of pride in getting under a heavy weight and lifting it with control and giving it a really good go. And if you're having a hard time mentally, or maybe you didn't rest that night, and you still give it a good go that night and still try to train as hard as you did the week before when you were or rested, how good is that when you then finish that leg session or back session that was really hard and say, hey, I gave it my all and actually perform better than I did last week when I was actually under better conditions?
The thing that I don't understand is, like, you're going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you're looking for every shortcut possible, what's the point? Like, why do you, like, obviously you don't want to change if you're looking for every shortcut, but you're still going to the gym.
I think people have the false mindset that by them turning up to some place, then automatically it's checking that box. Just by them being there, it's like, oh, yeah, you know, I've done my healthy thing for the day. It's like, that's why you've got the people that will go to the gym, they'll get a quick pump, and then they'll go to a festival and take 30 caps. It's like, you know, to them taking the 30 caps is justified. Sorry, they've gone to the gym, so them taking the 30 caps or then going and eating 5,000 calories of KFC or whatever, you know, the gym has justified them doing that because they've turned up there, right? So you've got people who use the gym to justify their week, right? Or you've got the people who use, you know, their weekend, right, or whatever, you know, to essentially justify going to the gym or to use it as an excuse, sorry. So, you know.
So well said. I completely agree with what you just said. Do you think there's an element of, like, you have a checklist and you're just ticking the checklist off? So you go on Instagram, right, you'll see someone's day and it'll say 10,000 steps, check.
Yeah.
Meal prep, check. Went to the gym for an hour, check. It's like almost like a boring job for them. Like, I do this stuff every day. It's not even a checklist. It's just part of my day.
Yeah.
And it'd be weird for it to not be on my mental checklist. I do 15,000 steps every day at my weight. It's easy. I walk to the station. I do a lunchtime walk. I walk my dog twice during the day. Like, by the time I do my little logistic walks and go to a few meetings of the day, that's 15,000 steps. I don't need to share it with everyone. It's not that important what I'm doing. It's nothing special. I think these people, they kind of just see the gym as this extension of work, and they don't want to do the work. But three of us, we love the gym. Like, this is something that we do for free, and we'd keep doing this. You'd pay $50 a day to go to the gym if you had to. If someone said, "Hey, all gym memberships are $50 entry for each session," you'd pay it somehow. You'd work it out.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, you would. So I think it's really hard for someone like us to kind of work out their thought process on why they go to the gym, put the D handle in their hand, and do 6 reps and leave, because their mindset is just so different to ours. Like, they're just so other that we can't even relate to it. We can make guesses and say, oh, maybe it's social media, maybe it's pressure from their friends, but these people are just wired so different to us, and their life journey has been so different to ours. It's almost alien. Yeah,
I mean, it just shows the disparity between the different norms of society, I guess. You know, it's an interesting perception, because, you know, we for some reason think on a certain level. And look, I'm not going to say that anything is right and wrong. You know, we've got what we know to believe to be true, and then those people genuinely believe what they are doing. You know, they think that to be true as well. But what's interesting is, why is there such a disparity? You know, yeah, you know, and I'm curious to know. I mean, do you have an opinion on that? Why you think there's such a big difference in societal norms and what we perceive to be the right way of doing things as opposed to other people?
Well, yeah, more specifically, what's different about you?
I've never really followed the crowd, even from a young age. I always like to do my own thing. I think, you know how people say they're an introvert or extrovert?
Yep.
I think the way that you work that out is by working out what replenishes you and makes you feel better afterwards. So some people, like, they love, like, lunches with all their mates, and they just live for that, and they couldn't have lunch by themselves. I often have lunch by myself during the week. I just go to the Morrison and grab a steak and chips. I like my own company.
Yep.
You know, I go for a walk. This is the last thing I do before I go to bed with my dog, and then I'm just chilled out, do my own thing. I think what I'm trying to get is with a lot of these people, they're just wired so differently to us. It's really hard to kind of work out how they view the world and how they see themselves. Let's just pause that for a sec. Can you go back to the question one more time for me?
With
so
what do you think makes us different to them? Like, nature or nurture?
Yeah, it's completely nurture.
Nurture.
It's our parents. It's our parents. It's how they raised us, and it's how they brought us up. It's what they didn't let us do when we were growing up, and it's the TV shows that we weren't allowed to watch. It was the things that we weren't allowed to go to on the weekends. It was all those times that we were told no. That's what shaped us. And that's what all those no's are the positive things that we see today in all three of us.
I think it's also the fact that because our parents were immigrants as well, it's like our sort of group, or migrants in general, we've always sort of been on the outside. It's like, you know, our ancestors especially, you know, the Greeks, we've always been in war, right? Or we've always been, you know, taken over by, whether it's been the Turks or another empire, whatever the case is, we've always had to sort of fight to find our own way. Whereas Western civilization, right, think about the way that it was introduced, right? You know, you had Captain Cook come here and it's like, okay, this is the way that everyone's going to be. Everyone just listened to that, right? Whereas our civilization is ancient, you know, so we already had a way of life. When that starts to become threatened, and we're forced to change, but we refuse to, it's like we've always been fighting for our way of life since the beginning, in a sense, right?
Well, a big part of what you're saying is the fact that we're literally slaves for 400 years.
Correct, exactly. And I think the generations that have, sort of our predecessors to the point where our parents, migrated here, it's like they carried a certain amount of values and traditions with them that they've passed on to us, and none of those align with going with the rest of the crowd, because if they were to go with the rest of the crowd back then, rather than we would all be Turkish or Muslim right now, right? But we're not, because, we kept in the Orthodox faith, we kept, our Greek relationships,
went against the grain, essentially.
Exactly, we went against the grain, which is why I think this falls into modern society, right? And how you've got Western civilization have all sort of moved together. And then you've got like, the like you say, the introverts, the people that are sort of on the outside of that circle, which are like, we're still doing things our own way, and we're happy to do that because it's how we know to have been brought up. It's how our ancestors have gotten through all the shit that they've gotten through.
I'll tell you something that's really interesting. You're actually more Greek than a person living in Greece, and I'll explain to you what I'm saying. When your parents came here, all they had was their traditions and Greek values, so they stuck to that. They held on to that really tight. Relatives that are the same age as them that stayed in Greece, they changed and became more westernized. So a lot of Greeks that you see in Sydney are actually more traditional around things like religion, their upbringing, than Greeks in Greece. So a big part of that is that your parents held on to those beliefs as migrants and taught you the best way possible.
Absolutely. That's something that we're grateful for.
I'd agree with that.
It's interesting thought that like,
I've never thought of it like that, but I've heard the state of Greece at the moment is...
Oh, it's shocking.
Yeah. It's really sad moving away from more traditional values, and it is sad. But I think there are pockets of the world where we do see that the diaspora are sort of carrying on the tradition of old Greece. The one that actually started the revolution, the one that we're proud of. So it's very important for us to keep those values going. Obviously, and we'll.
I was going to say, I guess, so wrapping up, Will, I mean, we've gone through your succession through, professional swimming to bodybuilding to, the successful corporate world. What does the future hold for Will Giovas in terms of bodybuilding, in terms of corporate? Like we spoke about, you obviously see yourself competing in 2026. We had spoken 100%. About off camera.
Yeah, of course.
With another federation.
Yeah, so I'll take you through the competing aspect.
Yeah.
I love NABRA at the moment. I've been learning more about what they do, their history. They've really come back in Australia in a big way. At the last amateur show, they were giving out prize money to the winners. And it's not a fact that they're giving out the actual money itself. It's the thought process behind it to show that they want to share that success with just the athletes. So that idea of giving back is everything to me. And so I remember when I did my last IFBB show, it was a really busy day. My little routine got cut to 17 seconds. I'm thinking, okay, so if I paid all this money, my routine's been cut. I asked for judging feedback on 3 separate occasions, never got it. So I really felt like it was a money grab. I'm not going to lie, I'm just going to be completely transparent. I feel like they were just after the money and that the service provided, which was the judging feedback and also getting a whole routine, just wasn't there. Now look at NABA, they treat their athletes so well. I literally got an email from NABA New Zealand saying, hey, come to our show next year. Would love to have you. We'll help you out in any way we can.
That's really cool.
What a great federation to even send me that as a message on Instagram. So I definitely want to take it as far as I can with NABA. My actual favorite Australian bodybuilder is Stan from Body Beyond. You know who I'm talking about, right? I've got a huge amount of respect for Stan.
Yeah.
Because Stan's competed multiple times. He's chipped away at it. When I think of what a bodybuilder is, it's not some guy that's won his pro card in his early 20s because he had good genetics. Those types of guys, they're never a success because as soon as it gets hard, they just give it up and leave. Someone like Stan, he's chipped away at it. He's done it for years. I see a lot of myself in him. And so I would love to compete at the same level as Stan as a NABA pro overseas with him. But that's the dream for me.
That's awesome.
My Mount Everest is win a pro card of NABA, obviously heavyweight bodybuilding, and do shows in Europe. If they do a show in Greece, I'll be there. Because I'd love to get my family to come watch.
That's sick. That's an awesome thing to aspire to.
Yeah, so that's. But then I've got other bodybuilding goals too. For some reason, I'm getting pretty damn strong at hip thrust lately.
I saw. Oh my god, bro! I saw it. What was it? 6 plates aside.
6 plates aside. 11 plates aside.
11.
11 plates aside.
Come
Come on,
on,
mate.
cut that
Sorry.
in half.
You can't cut the six. You can't, it's six.
Oh yeah, that's right. You got me to
Yeah.
get the extensions.
Yeah, punch out 11 plates aside. So I just got to transfer that into the barbell because the heaviest I'm doing on the barbell at the moment is about a 380. The world record's around a 440. It's a bit more than a 380, but it's not outside of the realm of possible. I'll give it a go. The guy that owns the record is a great guy from the UK.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I've seen how he does it. I think, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Actually, without being cocky and being complete confident, I know I can beat the world record for a hip thrust with a barbell. I've got it in me.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm gonna make a point of having the official world's strongest ass this time.
There's something that works with that. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's a nice thought. You got the first man to pull 500 kilos off the floor, then you got the world's strongest ass. You got.
I'll even change my Instagram
That's
name to
cool.
the world's strongest ass.
Yes,
Yeah, you know what you mean.
I've got the tights for it. Might as well just keep going.
Watch, you'll get famous for that. People will love that.
Yeah, we'll make watermelon videos. It'd be great.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's my aim on an athletic standpoint. I've got other aims too. I've got social aims. Once a month we do our boys' night, and I get a lot of utility from that because I love how. So what we do a boys' night for the people that are listening, and once a month on the first Saturday of every month, all the boys catch up and we have a dinner somewhere, and I love it. And this year we've had 12 of them on the first Saturday of every month. And anyone that's watching this, if you're a like-minded person that would love just to meet some really interesting people that are in the bodybuilding community, come join. And we have a really good time. And a lot of mates are doing business together. A lot of mates are doing professional services. I've got one mate, for example, that works in pest control. That's pest control other people's houses from the boys' night. I've got other mates that are coaching each other. I love it. And I love the fact that a lot of them have become best mates without me being involved. So I want to build on that next year and do more stuff just with the gym community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mainly the boys, because I think it's really good for the boys to have an outlet where they're hanging out just as the mates without, where they can just talk about any stress that they're going through, any mental challenges, where we can all be there for each other. So that's another big thing for me, like the community.
Yeah. I've noticed that the community has been a very big focus lately among bodybuilders, among people in the fitness industry, because it seems to be the only thing that was really missing from it in the past. And nowadays, we're involved in quite a few communities now.
And that's what happened this year too. Literally, we've been
all within a year. Yeah.
Why do you boys think that there's such a focus on community? I've got an idea, but what do you think?
I think men want to go back to default settings where they used to go meet all together, exchange ideas, see how everyone's going, like genuinely, not just, hey, how you going, like genuinely find out how everyone's doing. Share, shared experiences and, just mainly exchange ideas. I think we're just going back to what our default is.
I agree.
It's not just that. I think we've been pushed to do it because most of us that you'll see are in these communities, we actually all agree. We're all very like-minded on things. And I think that in our own isolated worlds, we know that there's a lot of things going on in this modern day and age that we'd love to talk about because we all disagree with it, but we don't have the platform to do that, or we don't have anyone to share those ideas with. And I think when you bring a group of men together that are essentially like-minded, and we can talk about problems that we are going through, we can talk about business, we can potentially start new friendships through those. It's just that sense of camaraderie, right? It's really missing in today's society because it is the very thing that they are trying to rip apart through starting off with a family unit, right?
I think it's mainly because everything these days is so compartmentalized. Like if you try to go outside your scope of where you should be working, like it's a bit like, oh, what are you doing? But especially a lot of these people are business owners. They have to wear so many hats. There is no compartment that they've stuck to. Like you're not just a coach, you're everything. And I think that's why, like, being so different from everyone else around them, we need people we can relate to.
Also, I actually have something else I want to add to it. I think I put a lot of my effort into my bodybuilding, where there's other times where I don't notice that other parts of my life are lacking. In 2015, it was a really hard year for me. I had some really bad things happen. I got assaulted by a group of guys at the front of a gym, and it just led to me losing a lot of friendships from it. There was a lot of change happened in 2015. In 2016 and 2017, other than going to the gym and going for walks up Bondi, I barely left the house for 2 years. all the girls that I was talking to, like during that time, it was long distance relationships or just talking to them on social media because I didn't want to even commit to anyone. I didn't want to get to know anyone. And I didn't really think about why. But now that I go back to think about it, I was actually depressed, I'm pretty sure. But I never really went about thinking about why or what. So I just locked myself up in my room, went to work and the gym. That's all I did. It was the most boring 2 years, but I just didn't know any other way. And I think that we get so dogmatic with our training that we sometimes don't really look at the bigger picture. And life is really good for me right now. I'm also at a really good place. I've got the best, most loving girlfriend. I just love my life in and outside of work, and I feel really blessed. And so I'm in a place where I can think more critically about my life and think, hey, I want to give back to my mates, make sure that they're doing well too. And also just keep an eye out on them, make sure that they're not going through what I was going through, because sometimes you don't even know that you're going through a shit time.
Do you think, though, that is necessary to go through a time like that in order to actually be able to have the ability to reflect on that going
100%. 100%. All the hardest times of my life have come from, all the best times of my life has come from all the feedback and knowledge that I've gone for hard times. So, you know,
It's like an elastic.
Yeah. So every time you kind of get kicked down, you build yourself back up. Like even at the end of 2022, early 2023, I was getting stalked by this girl that I dated for 1 month. She literally joined Camperdown Fitness. She moved down the road from me. And over the course of 8 months, I ran into her about 150 times because she knew my exact routine. She knew exactly where I was going. And I was so stressed at the time. And I was doing a bodybuilding prep. I just met my current girlfriend and I felt sorry that she had to put up with that. And it was a really stressful time. Thank God this chick left. What a blessing. But so many good things came out of it. It actually made me into a better person. So all the bad times always have good outcomes. You just got to realize that that's how it is.
And that they're only temporary too. Those bad times are always temporary. I think a lot of people get into the bad mindset of locking themselves in that time of depression and thinking this is going to be the rest of my life.
That's right. That's right.
When it's not.
That's right.
I wanted to ask you, well, this is something we always ask all of our guests, you know, as we wrap up, because obviously we're trying to, you know, help the mental, we're trying to help the lives of young men, especially from a mental perspective, you know, try and literally, you know, whether it's aspire to become something or if they're going through struggles at the moment, what would you say, living the life that you've lived and being in the position where you're in now, where you can finally say, you know, you're happy with the lifestyle that you have, which not many people can say, right? What advice would you give to a younger bloke who might be in that generation that we talked about, which is very affected by social norms and someone trying to find their way in life? You know, what would you give as advice to them, you know, essentially to move forward and to actually make something of themselves?
Which one's the camera? Which one's going to be the main camera?
That one there, yeah.
If you're a young guy, you just come out of high school and you're not really sure what to do, who you are, what's going on, you got to really make sure that you're against the grain, that you're not following others, that you choose your own path. And it's all going to start from knowledge about yourself and then try to do as much reading as you can about things like mental health, around psychology, around things like business, around things like the news. The more information that you get about yourself on multiple topics and about the world, this is going to then arm you to make a better picture of the life that you want, because now you have the knowledge to actually make decisions on what's best for you. So after the knowledge, then comes things, the most important part, which is your relationship with yourself. I didn't have a relationship with myself. I just did what others told me to do. And as I got older, I have a love for myself now where I just always take care of what my needs are. And when I can take care of what my needs are, then I can take care of the people that I love all around me. So have a good relationship with yourself. Even talk to yourself from time to time when you're going for a walk late at night and really love yourself. And then you can just have a life where you just love others too.
Self-reflection.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We appreciate that, bro.
No worries.
Thank you for coming on, Will.
Gentlemen.
Fantastic conversation.
Been great.